You're welcome.
First observation. What a beautiful home you have. Thank you. And Reverend Peggy told me sort of the backstory, but I just wanted to let you know, I walked in and I was immediately struck by the feel of the place, that it's incredibly intimate, which is great, because I would much rather have an intimate conversation with you than anything else. Now, it's been a momentous weekend. You all know this, yes? Yes. Yeah, there's wow, there's a lot stirring in the world. There's all that falderall on Friday, the inauguration, and then the great women's marches worldwide, everywhere. And I can see you have strong feelings about them. Probably of all kinds, which is perfect for a day of forgiving. It's actually perfect. What I'd like you to consider, though, is something Charles Fillmore said. Forgive everyone. Everything. Now wait. Everyone. Everything. So does anybody here kind of go, but? Anybody got a but going on? Yeah. But surely he didn't mean, right? But. So as I've worked with people all over the place on this subject, you can't find almost anybody who doesn't agree with the principle of forgiving. We all buy into it. But if I were to sit down with any one of you and have a conversation about those places you're not letting go, to use that language, in short order, we would find either you really don't believe in forgiving like you say you do, because you're not doing it. Right? Now, we're not talking about your friend. What did Jesus say? Something about it profiteth you nothing to pray for and forgive your friends. Instead, we have to pray for and forgive who? Oh, them. And I won't bother to invent what's in your head. But I know that you believe, because I've been in unity communities coast to coast. So I know you believe in it. So the only conclusion we can arrive at, there's only two possibilities. If you believe in this principle, either the strength of your resentment and your grievance is so great that you cannot consider letting go, or you don't know how to let go. That's it. Those are the only two options. So here's what I'd like to do. I want to tell you a story. But before I tell you the story to illustrate this point, I want you to take a deep breath. You're good meditators, I know. And I want you to start paying attention to the feelings that run right down through your core. Like, for example, you might take a breath and notice how it feels in your diaphragm, beneath your breastbone, in the pit of your belly. Just notice how it feels. Not a right thing, just a feeling. We talk about the core because that's our safety space, right? You all know this. The first place that we have trouble is in the core somewhere. I want you to pay attention to the feelings in your core as I tell you this story. I want to talk to you about a serial killer. He raped and killed 8 women. It's a true story. I want you to notice how you feel at this moment, right in your core. You feeling the forgiveness? What if you knew that he was remorseful? Does it change the feeling? What if you knew that he was not even opposing his death? He would be put to death after he was caught. He wasn't opposing it because he knew he'd violated our cultural standards and he deserved to die. Does that change your feeling about him? Forgivable? How about if I told you this? The last thing he was doing was trying to teach people coast to coast about how it was he came to be who he was. Any shift on the inside? What if I told you that he had a sexual paraphiliac disorder, diagnosed, documented, validated, and at the age of 13, he literally had an allergic reaction to his own testosterone, and it became violence which he acted out. You believe it? Whoa, wait. We're talking about a serial killer here. 8 women are dead. What if I told you that when he was caught, they put him on Depo-Provera, which stopped his testosterone production, dropped it to 0, prepubescent levels. And the violent urges went away, but more importantly, for the first time in his adult life, remorse was reawakened in him. He regretted for the very first time what he had done. And his only wish, what are you feeling now? What are you feeling in your core? Forgivable? Reprehensible? What are you feeling? His only wish was that people would learn from what happened to him. Because he said, if all you do is label me evil and put me to death, though I deserve it, you will fail to learn that there are little boys and little girls in your neighborhood right now, and those boys are going to be allergic to their testosterone, and they are going to hurt your little girls. What are you feeling? Notice how it feels. I just walked you down what I refer to as the way of understanding. I just walked you through. It's a true story. I wrote a book about this called A Killer's Grace because I was so profoundly changed by the implications of it. Because if it's true, in a case like this and many others, if it's true that literally someone is having a reaction to their own hormones in their body, then the only thing that separates me from a serial killer is by the grace of God, I didn't get that malady. Really? Brene Brown, you all know Dr. Brene Brown, doing some great work on vulnerability, wonderful work, data-based, evidence-based work. Dr. Brene Brown came to a remarkable finding about this. Not about serial killers, but about judgment. What she found was as soon as we judge and blame, our inquiry stops. As soon as we condemn, just as soon as we condemn, our mind closes and there is no chance for light to get in. And now we're in the space that Reverend Peggy was talking about. Just as soon as that light stops flowing in, we are blocked off from the Spirit. That's why forgiving matters. I know I'm pushing the limits here. Serial killer, pedophiles, terrorists. What are you feeling? I suspect some of you are having a but reaction. But, right? Of course. And yet Jesus' words and the principles of unity ask us to engage that, to learn to understand, to overcome it, which is why if you think back to the story of Jesus and the adulteress, what did he say? He didn't agree with the people who wanted to stone her, and he didn't agree with the people who wanted to let her off the hook. He said, transcendently, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And I imagine if I was in the crowd, I would say, what? Well, is that a stoner or don't? What am I supposed to do with that? And the answer is, seek to understand. Anybody ever notice that one of the deep principles we talk a lot about in the world is Stephen Covey's principle, seek first to understand. No understanding, no light, no solution. And as soon as we judge and condemn, as soon as we are unwilling to forgive, as soon as we are blocked off from the sunlight of the Spirit, there is no transformation. I was listening so closely to the transformation you all believe in. And every condemnation we hold, every judgment we hold, blocks us off from that because the light can't find us. Not because there's not light, not because it's not powerful enough, but we have a block in the eye, to quote Jesus. A limiting belief, we might say, in our unity world about the nature of evil, what happened, how it feels, if it happened in our family. I talked to a woman in Santa Fe, New Mexico, who came to one of my book signing events because she wanted to know how I was navigating this space with the serial killer book, because she was interviewing the killer of her sister. Another quick story. Her sister was killed in South Florida by a man. He was Aboriginal, Australian. He was stolen away from his family at a very young age. He was dropped into an all-white community in South Florida. He went to school surrounded by all whites. He had the features of an Aboriginal, so he was anomalous. And not surprisingly, he had an awful childhood. And it got acted out. And she told me, she said, Ron, it's the hardest work of my life. I have so much compassion for this man and what happened to him. And I am so broken by my sister's death. I just can't quite get to forgiveness. I can't quite let it go. I said, well, that's the healing space. That's the space. That's where we go to. So as soon as you begin telling the story, as soon as you keep your mind open, as soon as you begin to look and explore, as soon as you begin to examine your heart, things start to begin to shift. And quite often we find that we are living charmed lives because those things haven't happened to us. The way of understanding is not just in your head. The reason I wanted you to listen to what was happening in your core is because big pieces of breakthrough and transformation are an inside job, not a mental job. We literally hold on the insides. Can you feel it? Did you feel it when we were doing this? You can feel that stuff just clamping down inside. It's like, I'm not going to let that one go, especially if they've injured you badly. So we have to do that work on the insides. We can't just do it in our heads because it's not in our heads. And there's all kinds of techniques we can use. Anybody here do yoga? Some of you know that all those heart chakra opening positions can sometimes bust you loose in tears, right? They crack that stuckness open, and the next thing you know, you're sobbing. Not because of anything you thought, but because you physically have broken through this blockage. And when things begin to flow, a release comes about, and you'd be hard-pressed to explain why it releases, but it releases. If you've ever had one of those transformative moments with a kid, a loved one, where all of a sudden the real story hits the table, and you say to yourself, I had no idea that's what was going on. Just like that, the release occurs. Not up here, somewhere deep in here. So I want to tell you why this matters to me with one more story. Some years ago, about the time I was trying to figure out what to do with this serial killer who I was corresponding with, I got invited in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I lived at the time. I got invited to go to a workshop. I'm a professional workshop leader. I got to go to a workshop for a group of young men who were in a group home, their last stop before incarceration. Somebody had decided they were redeemable, 13 to 15 years old. And man, did I have a plan for that workshop. I was in 90 minutes, I was going to transform those kids on the spot. Can you hear the force of my will? Can you hear the ego, the arrogance in this? Because see, I knew. So about 10 blocks from this group home, a still small voice pops out of nowhere and whispers to me. And I ignore the still small voice. At 3 blocks from the group home, the still small voice appears again and speaks a little more urgently. And I say out loud to my windshield, I'm not doing that. I'm a professional workshop leader. I have a plan. It's going to be a good workshop. I get right in front of the group home, and I'm standing, straddling, 1 foot inside my car, 1 foot down on the pavement. So I'm like exposed, right? I'm getting ready to get knocked over. And that still small voice says, Ron, are you here for them? Or are you here for you? Right in the psychological, spiritual breadbasket. Because I believe in being available to people for what they need. So I said out loud, okay, fine, I'll do it, but it's on you. I was not very cooperative. I was kind of indignant because my plans were not going according to plan. I went in there and I followed directions. We got the kids, there were about 13 of them, 12, 13 of them. We got them settled, and I opened up and I looked at them, and I said, you have been told that you're bad, that you've done wrong, that you know better, and you have been lied to, You're innocent, and I love you. You're innocent, and I love you. You're innocent, and I love you. And it got really quiet, because that was the sum total of my new material. I had nothing else. So we're sitting there in the silence, just like what you all felt, the silence of the presence. And then one kid opened his mouth and started talking. And he told the story about what he had done, which was an awful story, but more importantly, he told the story of what had been done to him, and he started bawling. And he had never cried until that day. Next thing, another kid pings off of him. He tells what happened, what he did, what happened to him, sexual abuse, drugs at an early, and the whole story. And he starts crying, and those two are holding each other on the floor in a puppy pile. Pretty soon the kids are all pinging off, telling their stories of what happened to them. They're all crying. The therapists, the counselors are looking at me like, what's going on here? And I go like, I don't know. Not my deal. Not my deal. I don't know. But these kids are being transformed on the spot, and all I'm telling them is, you're innocent, and I love you. No judgment, no teaching, no adult expertise, no special knowledge, no professional workshopper. I'm just loving them. I have set aside, and I'm watching before my eyes. Something happened I had never imagined possible, because all I did was drop my judgments. That's all I did, and I held them in regard. Except for one kid who simply could not open his mouth. We held hands at the end, a lot of drug addicts, alcoholics in there. We said the Serenity Prayer. This one kid, white kid, really pale, frail, slender, comes across, gets right in my space, you know, like when they're too close? He's looking at my chest because he can't look me in the eyes. He starts mumbling. I ask him for his name. He tells me his name is Harold. I asked him if I could lift his chin, and he said yes. And then he told me, man to man, eyeball to eyeball, I'm gay, and I hate myself, and I want to die. And I said, Harold, you're innocent, and I love you. And it was real as real could be. All my judgments were burned out of me. He collapsed into me, I collapsed into him. And it was a remarkable healing moment for both of us. So usually when I tell that story, someone will say, well, Ron, they really did do wrong. That's not the point. The point is that the only healing space for them was a forgiving space. To drop all my judgments, all my opinions, all my condemnation, everything I thought, and just simply love them. Changed everything, changed me forever, which is why this is the work I do so much of now, because I saw what happened. And we could talk till the cows come home about what they did wrong and why and what we ought to do, and some of you are still saying, but what are we going to do with those youth perpetrators? What are we going to do with what? We got to do something. I'm not saying don't take action. I'm saying deal with the blockages, the condemnation, the judgment. Richard Rohr, Father Richard Rohr, the heretic Catholic, yep, some of you know him. He says if you don't deal with the stuff on your inside, you'll project it outside, and bad things will come of it. True of everything. True of everything. So now, forgive everybody, everything. Really. Not only will it change them, it'll change you forever. That's what forgiving does. And I would wish it so for you.